Hi, everyone. Welcome, everyone in the room and then everybody online. Welcome to CodamX. CodamX is a TEDx-inspired weekly talk where we invite industry experts to talk about anything tech-related. My name is Wendell. I'm your host for today, together with Liwa. If you have any questions for today, please write them down and keep them for the end. For the people online, you can type in your questions in the chat box and we'll also look at them. I'll give the microphone to Liwa now to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Wendell. Today we have Hajar Mokhtafa. She is wow, that's amazing. Now I have a blackout. Okay, anyway. That's very good. I've done this 100 times, and now of course I black out. I'll redeem myself. I will join you. Okay. This is Hajar Mokhtafa. Okay, I think I'm back. So she has a background in international business and management. She studied international business and management, after which she decided to switch into tech. And to do that, she did a 3-month boot camp to learn how to code. And that's how she got into tech. She liked it, she loved it, and developed herself into a full stack developer and a tech influencer. And now today she's going to tell us a little bit about the traits of a good and a successful full stack developer. So please, a round of applause for Hajar Mokhtafa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me for as your very first speaker at CodamX. That's quite something, isn't it? I see a lot of familiar faces, so that's really good. So 3 years ago, I was standing in your shoes. And the other day, I was walking around at Kodam, and I saw this girl walking around in her pajamas and in her slippers. And that really reminded me of when I was a student, because I would walk around like that too. And I'm looking at you. And I wanted to be a developer, but I did not have a technical background. I did not study computer science, so I felt like, well, I don't have any chance of being a developer until the New York Code and Design Academy came into my life. Now, this was a coding school from New York, and they started a campus here in the Netherlands, and they offered a fast track to become a developer. So I felt like, wow, this is like the most amazing thing that can ever happen to me. So I was excited, but I went from excitement to being super, super scared because I was overthinking everything. I was thinking about, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be able to compete with these computer science students? Am I going to be the only woman there and be surrounded with these stereotype male developers? I did not want that, but I was really scared of it. But I convinced myself to at least go to an open day because what could go wrong, right, at an open day? So I traveled to Amsterdam, and I'm from a small town, so it took me over 2 hours to travel to Amsterdam. And for those 2 hours, I could feel my anxiety level go up every second, every minute, every hour, until when I arrived at that coding school, I was ready to throw up. I was so anxious. So I remember wanting to go in, and what did I see? The thing that I was so scared of. I was surrounded with these stereotype male developers. So I freaked out. I totally freaked out. And I walked and I walked and I thought to myself, goodbye, I'm done here. So I walked back home. And when I was walking back home, I felt quite disappointed in myself. I felt quite emotional because this was the opportunity that I was looking for. But I let fear decide my life at that moment. Um, so I started crying in the middle of Amsterdam because, of course, but I also started to tell myself, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I cannot let this stupid thing really control my life. So I went back, looking down, of course, because I didn't want to look anyone in the eyes. And I attended the open day, and the presentation was everything that I wanted to hear at that moment. This is exactly what I needed in my life. So I signed up, thankfully. But you can imagine if I'm so anxious for an open day, what would happen during my very first day at the real coding school, the opening. Again, the first time I was about to throw up. On my first day, I actually threw up. I was so scared. And I thought it was at least going to be a nice introduction day, get to know each other. But no, we went straight into the code. And I was so not mentally prepared for that. The first day, you have to relax a little bit, get to know each other. But that was not what happened. So we were eventually in a group of 12 people. Now, not as many, of course, as that are here, but you can imagine that New York Code and Design Academy was really the pioneer back in the days of having a coding school, especially here in Amsterdam. And I know when Codam started, a lot of people thought it was a scam, because how can you go from being a non-developer until teaching somebody to be like a really, really good developer? Like crazy. And you do that for free of cost? That's crazy. So 3 years ago, that was unimaginable, unthinkable. And there were 11 crazy people to also show up. And I was one of them as well. So to make a very long story short, because I could honestly write an entire book about my experience during my coding bootcamp, the 11 other people that were with me in the group actually became family to me. And I'm sure you have that too. When you hang around for too long with a group of people, they become your friends, they become your family. And that's a beautiful thing. So the other day, I asked them all together, and I said to them, guys, I'm going to have a presentation at Codam, and they are experiencing exactly what we have experienced 3 years ago. So now we are more experienced. We went to the big real world and we worked there. And now we know much better what you have to do to be a successful developer. So we got together and we came up with a few things for you. So are you ready for it? Good. So tell me, I know that some of you are going to do their internships very soon. Can I have a raise of hands of people that are going to do their internship? It doesn't mean that you already have an internship, but that it's part of your plan, of your program. I see some hands over there. Great, great, great. Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's soon. That's 3 months, he says. And your internship is amazing. It really is, because you can gather all the knowledge that you have learned here at your coding school, but also the knowledge that you've gained throughout your life, and put that in real life experiences at real companies with real projects. But how do you get an internship, right? And especially if there's this specific company that you really, really want to work for, whether that is being an intern or having a full-time job there. That was something that I was very insecure about, because, well, I did not have a technical diploma. I thought that I wasn't going to be as good as the computer science students. So it was something that I was quite insecure about. And when I was applying for jobs and internships, I did that in a very traditional way. I would send in my CV, I would send in my motivation letter, and I would send in some projects that I've worked on for the past couple of months. But none of them got me a job. Now, of course, that makes you even more insecure. And I tried all these different things, but nothing worked. So after a couple of months, my ratio of interviews that I was invited for was 0%. Now, you might already be thinking, but what does the 85% stand for? The 85% stands for the number of the percentage of interviews that I was invited for after I applied a certain strategy. And I want to share that with you. What I did differently was, instead of saying to these companies what I could do for them, I showed them what I could do for them. So, for example, the very first company I tried a strategy on was KPN, the telecom company. And I went looking on their website, I went looking for errors, things that weren't in the right place. And I remember finding an element that wasn't working properly. And I looked in the code and I thought to myself, oh, okay, I get why this element is not working. So what I did is I made a screenshot of it. I sent them, this is a code that you have written down. This is the code that I think that you need to use to make this element working. Here it is. I sent them an email and I stalked some people on LinkedIn, I'm not gonna lie. But it doesn't matter because it was the very first time I was asked for an interview. Somebody asked me, can you please come over for a job interview? Now, guys, that was shocking. I couldn't believe it. So even if you don't necessarily go and look for mistakes in other people's website, it's also when you're just doing your daily things on the internet. For example, I wanted to order something from Coolblue. Coolblue, incredible company, really good website, great customer service, which I knew and I used after that. And I wanted to order something. And everything went really well during the entire flow. But when I came to the point where I had to fill in my name, my first name, my last name, all went well. And then I had to fill in the name of my street. And that's when things went wrong, because the name of my street is super long. It's Henriette Roland Holstraat. I mean, it's crazy. So the developers never anticipated somebody living in such a street. So the max number of characters that you could fill in the input field was just too short for my street. So I sent them a message via their contact center and made screenshot and said, well, this is what I think your developers have done. This is what I think you should do to improve your entire website, and especially this part of the website. So he said, thank you very much. I will send that to the technical team. The next morning, I was called by the lead developer asking me, do you need a job? Because I would really like to invite you for a job interview. So that was great. I couldn't believe it. And there's actually this one company that knows that there's some creative thinkers amongst you and really plays that very well. It's booking.com. If you look in their website, in the code, they actually have a message for you. They want you to come to them. Isn't that the smartest thing in the world? And doesn't this kind of says also a lot about the developers that work there? It makes you think, this is such a cool company, and these developers have a good sense of humor. So I think this is a really good example. And now I am very lucky to sit on the other side of the table. I don't have to go to interviews anymore, thank God. But people come to me for their job interview. And of course, you have to go through the flow, the application flow. So you have your technical interview. And whether they are junior or senior, I'll tell you, they all get a little bit nervous because everything that you have planned for in the demo kind of goes wrong in the end. But it's okay. It's about how you can communicate about what you did and how you handle the stress at that moment. But what is so important to me is I always ask myself one question. Can this person do the job? Now, this is something different than can this person do the job right now? Because I know you cannot do the job right now. And that's fine. I am looking for potential. So I am looking for potential in a way that, are you willing to work hard? Are you willing to continue learning? That is a very important one. Because when I was in coding school, the programming language that we learned at first was JavaScript. So I was JavaScript all the way. And I imagined that for my entire career, I would just use JavaScript until I came into the real world. So these are just some of the companies that I have worked for the past 2.5 years. And I would say, no, the half of the companies I was able to do JavaScript. But for the other half, I had to learn a different language. And I had to learn it on the job. So you can imagine how scary that is. But that is what they require. And it doesn't mean that I could just throw away my JavaScript knowledge because, well, I don't need it anymore. You build up on whatever you have learned already. So don't think that whatever you learn here, whether you can take it or not, you will certainly be able to use it later on in the real world. but you also have to be flexible. You also have to be open to learn new languages, because I can assure you that there will be companies that will require you to learn more languages, and that is fine. So next to being very open to learning all these new languages, I have learned that one of the most important skills that you need to have as a successful developer is to have problem-solving skills. Now, there's this quote I really, really like by Steve Jobs, where he said, every person in this nation should learn to code because it teaches you how to think. Think about problem solving. When I first started, I really thought that being a developer meant just writing syntax. But it's not about that at all. It's just a small piece of what you do in your daily life as a developer. Successful developers also think about how they can solve a problem. So whenever I get hired by all these companies, they generally couldn't care about how I solve the problem, as long as I solve the problem. And if I do it by writing code, that's fine. If I can find another way of doing it, that's fine too. They hire me to solve a problem. So that's what I have to do, solve a problem. And that was a huge switch in my mind of thinking on how approaching a problem. Because in my coding school, the only thing we really learned was code, 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 and syntax, syntax, syntax. And then you go into the real world and you think and you know and you experience there's actually so much more than that. So now you might be thinking, how do you do that? How do you get better at problem solving? I have created for myself 3 very simple steps that I want to share with you. It's all about understanding, planning, and dividing. Understanding meaning that if you don't understand the problem, how can you fix it? And most of the time, problems are very hard because you don't understand them. So how do you know you understand the problem? When you can just explain it in plain English. So then there is this planning. And this is something I was always super bad at, because when I would get an assignment, I would go jump right into it. I would start coding, no plan whatsoever. And I really learned over the years that that is not an okay thing to do. And I like to compare it with when people say, before you speak, think. And that's the same thing for this. Before you start coding, have a plan. Before you start solving a problem, have a plan. And it's very, what helps here is really about writing your problem down, talking to someone, one of your students, one of your colleagues later on, but also talking to something. I mean, some people use the yellow rubber duck. You might know it. If that helps you, do it. And the last one is divide, and that's probably the most important one, so pay attention. When you have a big problem that you try to solve, most of the time that will go wrong because it's too much of a big problem. You will end up crying. So what I do is divide the problem, make smaller sub-problems out of it, and then start solving them. And start with the smallest and the most easiest sub-problem for yourself. So that could be something that you already know the answer to, or that you're very close to getting the answer to. And then work your way up to the other problems. So eventually, you will have sub-solutions. And then you just have to connect the dot, and you have a solution to your original problem. So you might now be thinking, yeah, but Hajar, what if I cannot even solve my first sub-problem, right? What if I'm stuck right there? 2 things. First of all, breathe in, breathe out. That always helps. And second, don't worry, it happens to all of us. And what I've learned is that successful developers understand that bugs are not something that should irritate you. They're actually there to help you. And your computer also wants to help you. Your computer just doesn't understand you at this point. Because you're telling it, you think you're telling it to do certain things, but you're actually not really telling it to do that. You're telling it something completely different. You just don't see it. So by following these small steps, you eventually will see, oh, wait, I did not give you the right thing to do. Sorry, computer. So that's very important. And, it doesn't go well all the time, guys. Even if you have these sub problems and sub solutions, sometimes things can go wrong. And successful developers know that they can make mistakes because that's the only way for them to become successful. And I have colleagues that deleted databases. I mean, that's really not what you want, but it happens. And I wanted to show you Telfort. Um, Telfort was my very first client, the very first company that I ever worked for as a developer. I was super excited, super proud that I could work on such a big website. And up till that point, I was always working on the smaller sub pages that did not have that much traffic. And then actually very early in my career, they asked me if I wanted to be the owner of the homepage. Now that was like, oh my God, if you can be the owner of the homepage, I was proud of myself. And we had a complete redesign. And we have a complete redesign that is always chaotic because you have a lot of stakeholders and everyone is involved. So the developers, designers, the marketeers, people from legal, really everyone within the company. So we worked on it and we worked on it for some time, and then it was time to put it live. But what big companies most of the time do is because they think this is quite scary to give the users, the visitors that are used to a certain web page, give them something completely different. So what they do is that they have an A/B test, as they like to call it. So A test is the original. It's the website that everyone is used to. And they decided that 30% of their visitors will continue to see the old website, the old homepage that nothing happened with. And then 70% would see the new website, the homepage that I was responsible for. Now, 70% was still hundreds of thousands of people, so it was still a big thing. And I was responsible for everything. And the minute I hit live, because it was just a button that you had to click because it went all through a program. Yeah, I went from super excited until thinking, oh my God, this is the worst day in my life. Because the entire website went crazy. I mean, elements were going all places and people couldn't order anything. I mean, if you can't order, like, even the CEO goes crazy because the money should flow in, right? So it was the really a bad day. And because everyone was involved, you have hundreds of people saying, yeah, it was harder. Not the worst thing. But I learned so much from that. First of all, I learned I had to check everything a billion times before I put it live. But also that if I can work on such pressure, and I mean, everyone looking at you and everyone saying it was your fault, then honestly, I can do everything. So after having this horrible thing happen to me, I felt like, yeah, come on, bring it on. And seriously, everything I did after that, even the mistakes, felt so small. It was nothing to me. So I think it's always very important to share with you these type of stories because we sometimes only look at developers and we only hear the success stories, but things go wrong also for us all the time. And the senior developers that I work with, they also make mistakes constantly. It's totally fine. And I have one mister in the audience that you guys all look up to, I know for sure. But he was a student too one day, and he also made some mistakes. David, can you share your mistake?
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. And well, that's a good opportunity to learn stuff. Nothing at the scale of screwing up a whole website, but when I was in first year, I was working with my friend on the project Ray Tracer. You're probably familiar with it. And we had the deadline on the Sunday, and we were working on a Friday evening, wanting to be done with the project by the Sunday. And it was hold on until my friend was confused with the terminal, and he deleted the source instead of copying them in the turn-in directory. And that's the evening when we learned about version control. Yeah, at the time, Git was not a thing yet. It didn't exist, but there was another program named CVS at the time, and that's the first time I opened the documentation for CVS. So, yeah, mistakes happen, and you learn out of them.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. As you heard, even the best can make mistakes, and it's totally fine. And it's these small mistakes, or these bigger mistakes in my case, that eventually make you a successful developer. So thank you so much for sharing your story. So another thing that I have learned through the 2.5 years that I've been a developer is that really the difference between a good developer, which means that you can write good code, and a great successful developer, meaning that you can write great code and so much more, is that if you are able within businesses to connect IT with business, I promise you, companies will come running for you. Because what I have noticed in many companies, and honestly all companies, is that IT and business don't really communicate with each other. And we have a blame in that too. Because when I was part of a coding school, I lived in my own bubble. I'm sure of you, you're also living in your own bubble. You might not know it now, but when you go into the real world, you're like, yeah, that is what's happening right now. Because you're with like-minded people that love the same things and have a passion for coding, et cetera, et cetera. But within corporates, that's really not the case. And the IT department is just, a bunch of crazy people doing their thing behind a computer. So when I was not a developer, before I started my coding school, I would always read about these articles that there was another IT project failing that cost millions and billions, and I would never understand that. But now that I've stepped into the real world, I 100% understand it. I am surprised that it's not even more. Because if you have two people on two different islands not communicating with each other, but they really, really, really need each other, like, of course you're gonna fail. So one of the things that I've really learned, and I think will help me, I hope, in becoming a successful developer, is really trying to be the connection between the two. So whenever I go to a new client, to a new company, I always say, okay, I'm gonna start working for you, but I want it to go my way. So the very first things I do is I create a workshop and I invite people from all different departments, really throughout the company. And I tell them, guys, here are some web pages from your website. Let's think about how we can do it better. And they're also excited, but also some people are also thinking, not so sure. I don't want to talk to this person. I don't want to talk to that person. But I don't care. This is the assignment, and this is what you have to do. So I make the little groups and I let them work on creating ideas for their website. Now, am I really interested in their ideas? Honestly, I'm not. I'm not. Because the ideas they come up with are the ideas that I could have come up with as well. They're really not anything special. But what I want is that these people have worked at the same company for years and never spoke to each other. Never, ever. Now that is a problem. This is the very first time they spoke to each other and they're learning, oh, wait a minute, you're actually pretty smart or you're actually pretty nice. So with this, you create a so much better culture within a company and it makes, hopefully, the articles get less and less with an IT project that failed and this that failed and that. So that's really what I'm trying to do. And I feel like that is really what makes a difference. If you can connect these two worlds with each other, you've done a great job. So I am absolutely certain, you guys, that you have it all in you to become successful developers. You're actually well on your way now. just remember, being a developer is so much more than just code. It's also the world around it. And when you do get to the top, send the elevator back down for the others. You and I have been very, very lucky to be in this position, to get almost a second chance in our lives. And we get to do something that we love to do. We are very, very lucky. Do not ever, ever forget this. And everything that you learn today, you have to pass on for those tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hajar. We'll have some questions now. So if anybody has a question, please raise your hand and we'll make sure the microphone gets to you. It's a catch box. Please wait until the microphone is with you until you talk, because otherwise people online and the recording won't be able to hear you. Any questions right away? Sorry? Yes, please join us. All right, let's get the catch box. There we go. Awesome. That's great. So your hand is the highest. So I mean, I got it, right?
Thank you, Lieve. I'm David Giron. I'm the director of Codam for the people there. I wanted to take the opportunity of the first question to thank you very much, HR, for what you're doing today. It's really important. Thank you to all of you guys to be there as well. I have a question. You showed us a moment of your life when you screwed up big time, but could you tell us about the moment when it was a huge success, a moment that you are really proud of that you would like to share? This thing I own, I rocked it.
Yeah, the mic is on. Great. Thank you so much for your question. Um, the moment I felt that I rocked it was when the website that I kind of messed up, I fixed again. Under all this pressure, you guys, you cannot even imagine what kind of pressure I was on, because everyone was looking over my shoulders and I really had to fix it. So when I fixed it, I was very proud of myself and I thought to myself, you know what? If I can handle this, I can handle anything, really. So this is the most thing I've been very proud of. And the other websites, really, they feel like nothing after that, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You were talking about connecting two worlds, so business and technical. My question is how would you tackle it? Because if you look at the business side, it's mostly about money, and they don't care about the technical part. How would you make sure that the business part knows that the technical part is as important as getting the money?
Really good question. And actually, it's something that I thought as well, right? I thought, well, the business only cares about the money, which is which is kind of true. But you know what? You're part of that money. You're part of it. You can make them so much richer. So, in order for them to get richer, they have to communicate with you. And it's a two-way street, you know? The same way that the developers and the people from IT have all these opinions about business, business has an opinion about you. And it's really all about making that first connection and talking to each other. And then you'll know that, hey, you're so much more than just this person from IT or this person from business. So honestly, it's about communicating. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about, so you were saying that you work for all of those companies, and I just wanted, maybe if you could comment a bit more, how do you make connections with those companies, and how do you negotiate maybe what needs to be done? Like, do they find you, or you find them and come up with something that you could improve? And it also seemed like you tricked them into strategy, like consultancy, when you were being asked to do some like technical development. If I understood right from your presentation, so if you could comment on that.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Did everyone hear it? Yes, right? So I know it might seem like I tricked them, but you know what I'm really trying to make clear to all of you is that being a developer is really all about being kind of a consultant. You cannot just sit behind your computer. That is not really your job alone. Your job is really to solve a problem. And whether you want to do it with code, it's fine, but as long as you solve the problem. So sometimes that does mean that I have to kind of step out of my role and be a consultant and be an intermediary between two worlds. But if that makes my life easier as a developer, then I'll do that. And at the same time, you're also learning all these new skills, and you get to experiment a little bit with this, which means that you're growing, and that's always a good thing. Um, and to go back to the question about the companies that I worked for, as I'm a full stack developer, so for some of the companies I did the front end, for some of them I did the back end, and some of them I even thought about how to go around working in an agile way. It's just the most simple thing, honestly, to most of us. But for some of the companies that, even the largest, because we always think the largest, they kind of know what they're doing. Most of the time, the largest company have no idea what they're doing. Honestly, they have no idea. So if you can step in and also step up your game by just doing so much more than what they hired you for or what they thought they hired you for, you can really go from just starting out to being a very successful developer. Because in my opinion, a successful developer has nothing to do with the years that you have been as a developer, really. It's so much more than just that. You can be a successful developer by just being a developer for 1 year. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Uh, how big is a typical team you work with? Like for instance,
Oh yeah.
Telfort site, with how many people did you have to work?
Do you mean just the people from IT?
Yeah.
Okay, so approximately we're with 50 people, um, but we have multiple teams. So I'm not sure how it works for the smaller companies. Maybe you have more experience with that. But for the bigger companies, is that they divide the website, basically. So there are 50 people working on this side of the website, 50 people working on that, on those particular web pages. So the teams that I'm particularly in are 50, around 50 people. Yeah.
And that team for instance, the homepage of the Telfort site.
Oh yeah, the homepage is, and most companies, so if you get the chance to work on the homepage, it's really hundreds of people that have an opinion about it. Really, literally everyone is working on the homepage because you have marketers that have to give you the content, but there's also legal that makes sure that whatever is put on the homepage is actually correct, and that they don't get sued. There are people from contact server that also need to know about these changes on the homepage, because what if somebody calls and says, I've seen this on the homepage, and that person doesn't even know what that person is talking about. So really, everyone is involved when it comes to a homepage.
Uh, Thank you for the presentation. I can imagine that not getting back any replies from all the letters you sent can get you very discouraged, and
Yeah.
it's probably happened many times after that still. How do you deal with that? And have you considered quitting, like developing altogether and going back to your original marketing business it was, right?
Yes.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, a lot of crying because it's very hard because now I can look back onto it and I'm like, well, just a period of X amount of months. But when you're in it, it feels like forever, and you're like, I worked so hard and I went out of my comfort zone to learn this new skill, and I thought that people would be like, yes, come work for us. But that wasn't the case at that moment. I have to say that was 3 years ago. Now times have changed because 3 years ago, being a student from a coding boot camp, that was kind of a crazy thing. Now Codam is so much more well known, and you have a great ambassador, Corinne. So that's don't worry about that. I am very certain that you will all find internships and jobs very soon after after you're done with your program or even before that. But yeah, so there was a lot of crying, but I never thought that I was going to stop because, like I said, I felt like I worked so hard for this already, and I'm not going to let anyone take away this great opportunity that I could get out of this. So no quitting, never.
All right, thank you. and then Hajar will be available for questions afterwards.
Hi. Thank
Hi.
you for sharing your strategy. My question is, once you master that skill of connecting themes and worlds, how can you go on and look for more jobs like that? Is there a name for this particular talent, this skill?
Do you mean connecting the business with the IT? Is that
Yes.
what you mean?
Is there a job?
I
name?
wish there was. There should be. There really should be. I think the official job for that is like the transformation director. I think that person is responsible for it. But yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
good. I will
Yeah.
keep looking.
So I think transformation director, and honestly, it's also a role that I kind of grew into because I felt the need for it. But I will definitely keep you up if I know the official title for it.
It's a
I will let you
problem
know.
you solve.
Sorry?
You it's a role because you needed it. It's a problem.
Absolutely. It is
solve.
definitely a problem for many, many companies.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, let's do one more question. If there are any more questions, right there in the back.
Yeah, so you mentioned as a way to get more interviews, you said instead of telling the company what you could do, just showing them what you can do. But I could see some issues with this. Actually, I've already read about stories where companies will take advantage of this by asking the applicant to um, like create something for them in order to get an interview or possibly a job. And then after they create the product, they end up using it, but then don't, um, you know, give the person a job.
Yeah.
So do you think this is a big enough issue where you'd have to like take precautions, like maybe copywriting the work you do, or
Well, thank you so much for your question. That's a valid question. I would never create a program for anyone without them paying me first.
Mm.
That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you what's wrong with your website, and I'm going to fix it for you if you pay me. And that's really it. There's too much demand for people like yourselves. So don't ever get tricked to do that. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Hajar, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
We have this presentation every week at Wednesday at 4 p.m. So tune in, follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, where you can see the live stream as well if you cannot join us today. Thank you for coming today.